Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending where you're joining us from today. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedules and, yeah, joining us on this edition of Guidebook Meets. For anyone who has not joined one of these before, this is really an opportunity we like to take to bring some of our customers' stories to life, as well as diving into important discussions and industry discussion specifically. So, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Nathan. I'm the community manager here at Guidebook. And today, as you're all aware, we really wanted to discuss the importance of accessibility in events and the role that mobile and other technologies can play in supporting that. So, here at Guidebook, we value accessibility and understand the critical need behind accessible platforms. As we are a small company, our primary focus has always been end user driven, maintaining the critical functionality that critical functionality is accessible for end users within our product. However, there are numerous improvements and enhancements that our product and engineering team are always working to address, especially as resources will allow. And on the follow up to this, we're going to share some of that information with you all as we want you to kind of be on top of what we're doing. And also, we hope to hear from people throughout today, but also in the future around what they would like us to see us do. So, with that in mind, I am really pleased to be joined by Marina McCormick from the Texas Association of Parents and Educators of the Deaf. So, Marina, firstly, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, I'd love to kind of hear little bit about you, and I'll pass over to you to introduce yourself and yeah, say hello.
Appreciate having the opportunity to share our story and how Guidebook has supported our mission with our conference. But hello to everyone out there as well. My name is Dr. Marina McCormick. I currently serve as the Region 4 Education Service Center Program Coordinator for our Regional Day School Program for the Deaf in Houston, Texas. I am also an adjunct instructor for graduate and undergraduate studies at both the University of Houston and Texas Tech University. And then in my spare time, I volunteer and serve as president of the Texas Association of Parents and Educators of the Deaf. And it is in this role that I am coming to you today.
That's amazing. And I think, I'd love to start off just by talking about that role a little bit more, and getting a little bit insight into specifically the association's biannual conference and, what it is you're running and looking to achieve with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Texas Biennial Statewide Conference for the Education of the Deaf has been occurring every other year since the early 1980s. Taped, as it's known for short, acts as the fiscal agent for the conference, and the current president of the association then acts as the chairperson for a volunteer planning committee that's comprised of TAPE members. So, this conference is really one of the largest conferences of its kind in the United States, offering high quality professional learning opportunities that supports the needs of professionals, families, and even university students and high school students within the field of deaf education. So, even if you're not from Texas, we'd love to have you come join us.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess before we kind of really dive in as well, I'd love to learn a little bit more about the mission at Taped and how that lives and breathes through the work that you're doing and, not just within the event, but with, the wider organization as well.
Sure. So, our mission at TAPED is for families, educators, and communities to collaborate to ensure equity and excellence in service for our students who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deafblind. And so, this mission comes to life in various aspects of our conference. For example, our planning committee is comprised of roughly 25 individuals from across the state. Not only do they represent different cultural and linguistic backgrounds, but they also represent different educational philosophies within the field of deaf education. This diversity of thought on our planning committee, I believe, then ensures that we have a wide range of offerings across our 12 breakout strands for our conference. So that helps to better meet the needs of our roughly 600 to 700 participants when they arrive, because we need to make sure that we're individualizing the learning experience for everyone. We're also helping to connect professionals and families to various community stakeholders through our exhibitor hall, so that they can collaborate on ways to better support our students as well. And then finally, one of the best things that we do as an association is we offer annual scholarships to professionals who are seeking to become teachers of the deaf or sign language interpreters. And we also provide scholarships to graduating seniors who are themselves deaf or hard of hearing and are looking to pursue higher educational opportunities.
And I guess, kind of honing in on the event and looking really at the challenges that, you face when um, looking at your conference, like what are kind of some of the key hurdles that, you've had to overcome and really like how did you kind of set out about addressing those and looking at different ways to kind of tackle those challenges head on?
Yeah. So, as you might already guess, communication access is really our main challenge when it comes to providing an inclusive experience. Many of our participants themselves are deaf or hard of hearing, and they rely on sign language interpretation or real time captioning to access information. So, not only do our participants need communication access at our keynote speakers with our keynote speakers or during their breakout sessions, but they also need to have access to timely updates throughout the conference. And then another hurdle that we experience is building capacity with various professionals who support our conference in our chosen host city. So, our planning committee devotes a lot of time to training various individuals, such as hotel staff or AV technicians, to ensure that our participants have an inclusive experience.
And some of those gaps that you've identified, like how has that evolved over time? You've been running this event for a while. Have you seen that some of those challenges have, evolved with time, or that they've become easier to address, with new technology or new kind of options that are
Mhm.
available to you as an organization?
Yeah, prior to using Guidebook, our conference planning committee realized that we were spending quite a bit of money and time on program development and signage. The signage for our events prior to using Guidebook typically reiterated information that conference participants could find in their conference program. We also found that we were spending a lot of time just as planning committee members helping our participants navigate the landscape of the conference, making sure they knew where to go, when we were having breaks, things like that. And so that kept our planning committee members from being as effective as they could be in supporting more of those background logistics that are needed for the conference, such as taking care of food and beverage or supporting the AV needs of our breakout speakers. And so over time, I really do think that Guidebook, as we've incorporated it, has addressed those gaps, which has then freed up more of our planning committee members' time to be more effective and to help our participants have a better experience overall.
Yeah, definitely. So would you say that that kind of streamlining of communication or accessibility to, the relevant information, was that the kind of core objective when you were looking for technology to, help your event?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Guidebook appealed to us because of its ease of use, both for our participants and our planning committee. So, nowhere in my introduction did I say that I'm an expert on mobile app development, and many of our planning committee members themselves are not. But um, Guidebook makes it so easy for you to develop a conference app with user-friendly guides and self-explanatory data entry along the way. So we, with our very limited knowledge of app development, were able to sit down and create an app for our conference in pretty short amount of time. And this is a huge win for us, especially as a volunteer organization, because all of us have day jobs in addition to being a part of the association. Guidebook also makes it incredibly easy to educate your participants on how to use the conference app. So, Guidebook provides pre made materials that outline how to download the app and how to access conference information. And so, 2024 is our third time using Guidebook, and I feel like we just get better and better at using this mobile technology at each one of our conferences.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know you have used the app, a few times now. And I wonder, like, obviously, when you first came to Guidebook, as we just mentioned there, you have these goals in mind of, how you want it to support with accessibility. Like, has that evolved over each time you've used the app, or have there been ways in which you've been able to find better ways to utilize mobile?
Yeah, so Guidebook, when we first used it, obviously we were just learning the ropes. And so we were entering in speaker information, we were um, uploading presentations for our speakers, inserting maps, things like that, basic tools of the trade. But, to make the event even more inclusive, Guidebook, we learned over time, is able to embed third-party video content. So if we wanted to include videos from YouTube, for example, that could have sign language interpretation on the YouTube video. It could also have captioning, and that can help us with communication access. We also really love the use of push notifications to communicate conference updates more effectively with our participants, because as you might imagine, that is a challenge for our community. And then finally, Guidebook can help our participants connect by us incorporating third-party social media like Facebook through the app. And so that's really great because I don't know if everyone is aware that is watching right now, but deafness and being hard of hearing, this is what we would call low incidence disability. And so oftentimes individuals are scattered, right? They may be a few that have that difference in their local community. And so it's so critical to be able to bring people together across great distances, even especially in a state as large as Texas. So Guidebook does make that very easy through tools such as being able to embed third-party social media. That just helps people stay connected long after our conference ends.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That kind of continuity of community, almost, of people being able to stay connected and engaged once the event ends. And I'm curious as well, thinking of the attendees and the people that engage with your event, how do you engage, or do you engage them around, how to make the event more accessible, or kind of create different ways to not just using Guidebook, but the event more generally? Do you kind of go about getting that feedback, or what kind of feedback are
Oh,
you
yeah.
receiving?
Yes, absolutely. So, something that we've been trying to do more of is surveying our participants in advance. So, we do have a Facebook page for the Texas Statewide Conference for the Education of the Deaf. And so, oftentimes, as we're planning the conference experience, we may have a thought that comes to mind, like, okay, I wonder if they would like this bag. Do they even want a bag this year? That's often a hot topic. Do we give a bag? And so we can put that survey on Facebook, right? And we can get their feedback in advance and incorporate their expectations of the event, so that we're hitting the mark. But we also do an end of conference survey. And so that's a great time where we just pour through all of their feedback and try to figure out, okay, how are we going to get better the next time? And our participants, in relation to Guidebook, our participants have really enjoyed having Guidebook as our conference app. They find it to be very easy. They enjoy being able to plan their conference experience in advance. They really do like having access to hands-on, they like having access to presentation materials right at their fingertips, especially because some of our sessions, they get full and perhaps you won't be able to see everything that you want to see, but it's all within the app so that if they want to go later to download a presentation that they may have missed, they have it. That's a big win. And then finally, they also just feel constantly updated. That's something that our participants report. Before, it was really hard, as you might imagine, when you don't have that technology to spread the word quickly, like, hey, we have a change with our break time. Instead of it being 1 o'clock, it's going to be 1:30. You got to get it out quickly. That's been a win as well.
Yeah, and are there any kind of specific features when, you've spoke there a lot about how people are engaging with the app, and that's brilliant. Are there any kind of features within the app that are most helpful when you're thinking about accessibility? Yeah.
I do love the ability to embed videos, for sure. I think that for our population, that's critical. I do also like how Guidebook is somewhat compatible with screen readers too, for individuals who are deafblind. That's helpful. I would say those are the biggest ones, along with just being able to build connections through Guidebook, trying to think of the particular name of the feature, but where you're able to, for when you build the conference app and you're able to identify people that you want to connect with, that is incredibly helpful too. And the reason why for our population is because I think it might be a misperception that everyone within the deaf community signs. If we're talking cultural deafness, yes, absolutely. They're using American Sign Language, but there are other individuals who may be lowercase d deaf, who do not identify with the deaf culture. And so they may be using listening and speaking as their communication modality. So being able to text even through the app, to have conversations, bridging communication differences like that is incredibly helpful.
And you mentioned the deaf-blind, and we had someone ask a question around, do you have attendees deaf-blind at the conference? And they did note that one of the challenges they found, that enlarging of fonts is something that we can't do on our side at the moment, and that is definitely great feedback, and it's why we want to have these types of
Right.
conversations. But I do think you mentioned that screen readers can interact with the app quite well. I wondered if you had other ideas or strategies around that you've maybe implemented or looked at, or also other ways in which you would like to see Guidebook evolve, because we are, as I said at the top of the call, we
Yeah.
are looking to continue our work and what we're doing in this space, so it's great
Yeah.
to get that feedback.
Yeah, and I want to clarify because it's somewhat accessible through the screen reader. Like I think the alt text for images, for example, could be improved upon, how Guidebook interprets the images and provides that information to a user who is visually impaired. But yes, I have that same concern. If they can't enlarge the font on the app, then my responsibility is to ensure that their program materials are enlarged so that they have that content in some other way. I may also have to sit there and reach out to the participant in advance and say, okay, here's our conference schedule. Can you tell me where you would like to go? Do you have any idea in advance of where you might want to go? And then I can do my very best to prepare enlarged font materials for them, brailled materials for them, if that's a way that they access the content, just so that they have an alternative way to accessing that information. I think it's important to have both. You can have all of the high tech options in the world to support accessibility, but you also, in my opinion, should have low tech options in case the high tech fails you. That's critical. So that's why, like, especially for participants who may both be, deaf and have some sort of visual impairment, we need to make sure that we have options.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think the element of low tech and high tech in kind of unison is a great approach to a lot of event strategy, right? It's you need to kind of be prepared for all instances and outcomes, and I think
Right.
yeah, that speaks true here for sure. And I kind of want to talk a little bit more about outside of Guidebook. Today, are there other technologies that you're utilizing with success around that sort of support accessibility within your event, or almost success maybe based on that facial reaction?
Within the event, I think Guidebook is really our biggest push for incorporating technology. We are also incorporating remote captioning. That's something we did for the first time at this 2024 conference offering. So, where we have participants who need real time captioning, instead of having someone in the room following that person, captioning what speakers are saying, using another projection screen, we're giving the person who needs that real-time captioning perhaps an iPad, and they log into a Zoom room and they're connected to a remote captionist who is listening to what is happening in the room and then captioning in real time to that iPad. And that actually I prefer, because we want to be accessible, but we also want to be respectful of the individual who is requiring that accessibility, right? I don't think any of us would like to have someone follow us along from, room to room to room, almost highlighting that need. And there's nothing wrong with having that need, but again, if we can provide that in a way that eliminates that possible social anxiety aspect of that, then we're all for it. So in our community, it's very commonplace, but again, tailoring to individuals, respecting individuals' preferences, that's important to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to, with that kind of in mind as well, I think for anyone who maybe hasn't implemented a mobile app yet, or just technology more broadly, I think what kind of what kind of considerations do you take when you're looking to adopt a new technology? What's the important things that you need to address when dealing with technology providers, or anything like that?
Um, I always I think that the advice I would give to any organization would be that you want to always think first of what are the possible barriers, right, that an individual could experience engaging in your event. And then from there, identify how you're going to remove those barriers through the use of various tools, whether that be high tech options or low tech options, including mobile technologies. One thing that I really like about Guidebook is that it's easily the mobile apps accessibility conformance report, or ACR, is easily accessible on the website. And that's essential for any event planner, right? When you're thinking about, okay, can this mobile technology support me in overcoming these barriers that I've identified? And so it just helps you engineer better solutions for your participants.
And I want to look ahead a little bit. And again, not just mobile, but I want to focus on all technology, because I think it's important to see what's coming down the pipe. Or where do you see technology going in the next few years when we're talking about accessibility? Are there things that you've maybe got your eye on, or are you hopeful of technologies that might be supportive in development?
I think we're going to continue to see huge gains with accessibility through the use of technology. Speech and image recognition, those are already part of our everyday experience. Virtual reality rehabilitation is also like in the works, and we see improvements to various assistive technologies all the time. And that's going to continue to promote independence for persons who have disabilities. One thing that I'm really hoping that we get to in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, is the improvement with regards to algorithms in AI as part of companies' hiring practices. AI potentially, can have the same biases as its creators. And so removing these biases as part of AI-powered hiring tools is critical, in my opinion, to providing equity for all. So eliminating that potential discrimination in advance when we're using AI-powered hiring tools, I think we need to move to quickly.
Yeah, and is that something that you've seen discussion around, or is that
Oh
something
yeah.
that you,
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yes, it's a huge topic in not just our community, but for example, I recently attended the Texas Technology Access Programs, or TTAP, annual conference, and there were sessions that revolved around this topic of how AI can be discriminatory, um, perhaps not initially intentionally, but because we need to review those algorithms for bias that has been embedded into it and then seek to remove it. Several lawsuits that have been in the news lately around this. If you just give it a Google, you will see that this is a very hot topic. I know the ACLU is very much involved in topics regarding this, in lawsuits regarding this topic at the moment.
yeah, no, definitely. And um, I guess how has the shift towards digital solutions like Guidebook, but technology more generally. How's that changed TAPE's overall approach to event planning, if at all, or how might it change your overall approach to event planning in the future?
Yeah, I'm smiling because I remember when we first started discussing even having a mobile app for our conference, and there was a lot of critical discussion about whether or not our participants were ready, right? Um, is it is it something that they're going to be able to quickly pick up and go with, or how much time are we going to spend educating them on this? And then I remember someone at the table had said, but we love our program, the hard copy program. And I was like, I love our program too.
It's hard
But
to let go of the program sometimes.
it's very hard to let go of the program, Nathan. Yes. We take into consideration now. I mean, I said earlier, we're on our third time using the app. And what I love now is that evolution of discussion that I hear with our planning committee. We're taking into consideration more than ever before what can go into Guidebook and what needs to go into the program and what needs do we have for signage. And so we're really having a deeper conversation, right? About, okay, what is the information we want to share and how do we want to share it? And where do we want to share it? How is it most effective? And I love that. I'm hearing people now when we come to the table say things like, is that something that we can put on the app instead of like everything has to go into the program? So I love that deeper level of discussion and the intentionality of how we share information.
And in those discussions, yeah, I guess for the people who are listening, are there any tips or any sort of words of advice or suggestion you can provide in, you know, how to, evolve your event going forward? Or yeah, I'd love to kind of get your take on what's coming of those conversations and how's that maybe having an impact on the event itself.
Um, I think one thing that like, if I could give like a tip, it's just be brave enough to try it, right? Um, Embracing that growth mindset is really important when you're making a big shift from hard copies of materials, right? And then moving into perhaps a mobile app to share information. And so, give yourself permission to not be perfect, right? Give it a go, see what works, and then be like a scientist about it. What worked, what didn't, how am I going to improve moving forward? Um, but you have to start somewhere, right? And you have to take that first step. And so I really would encourage people to give it a go. Where we started. I remember I was responsible at that time for actually building the conference app that first year, and how much we've learned just from that circular process of what worked, what didn't, how can I improve, what do I want to do for next time, has been critical in developing our use of Guidebook. So, great example of that is we incorporated our survey, our end of conference survey, into Guidebook rather than having it be like a standalone form or separate, detached from the program or the app. And so, troubleshooting and figuring out, okay, what can this app do? It takes time, right? You learn the basics and then you grow from there.
And how many people, how many attendees attend your conference?
Roughly 600 to 700 people come every other year. The highest attendance that we've had was a little over 900.
And I'm always curious, how are people engaging? Are you seeing people adopting the app and download it and spending time in it? Like, how does that look for you? And also, are there things that you're doing to help drive that engagement of people downloading the app and making sure that they're in there?
Yeah, so we do track their use of the app. I think we can improve on that. We always allocate time at the so trying to think. We at the beginning of our conference, we will have like an opening session where we provide information relevant to the conference, and it leads up to our keynote session on that first day. And so, as part of that opening session, we do give them an introduction to the app. We walk them through how to download and different tips and tricks, that they need to know to make the best use of the app. However, I do think we're still in this like transition phase of we have people who really love the hard copy program, but then we have a younger generation that really loves the mobile app. And so it's I see us improving in our participants making use of the app, but I do think that we, going back to thinking about 2026, we need to figure out how we can increase their engagement through the use of the app.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask, where you have sort of two different audiences, and I think this is a challenge that a lot of people have. If there's some who are still, they're comfortable in their program, it's the way they've attended events for a long time, and there's those who are adopting the app. Do you see a difference in the experience that they're getting in attending the event? Whether that
Oh,
be
yeah.
from a networking or
I think so. Individuals who are using the hard copy program and are relying on that, who don't download the app, they miss out going back to those push notifications. Like they're missing that information about, okay, here are changes, or surprise, we're having a new break offering. Come on down to our exhibitor hall. Little things like that they find out later and they'll ask people. I heard this actually at our last conference, well, how did you find out that, there was a surprise break? Well, I had the app. That's how I knew. Oh, okay. Well, can someone show me how to download the app? Yeah, I'd love to show you. But uh, that's in and of itself a great example of we're going to have two different experiences, right? Because one of us is staying in the loop regarding timely information, one of us isn't. Um, but also, I think in terms of networking, you can connect with the people who have downloaded the app, right? And so, even though I would love to see more people in the app, at least those individuals are building a network, communicating with each other, getting access to all of the presentation materials. That's one way that we really try to, if you will, sell the app. You get access to all of the presentation materials across this entire 3-day conference in the app. So it's in your best interest to download it. If you don't download the app, then you're missing out. So you're not getting access to those materials. So eventually everybody comes to the app. But initially at that first day, I think it's we do spend a lot of time kind of encouraging people to download the app, make use of the app, referring them back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. My number one tip for anyone when it comes to adoption, and there's a few, but if I had to pick one, is to have something in the app that only exists in the app, that
Mhm.
really is a good reason for people to download and engage, because then they're going to, they don't want to miss out, there's the
Mhm.
FOMO or anything like that. So I think making sure that you don't offer everything the app does somewhere else, you're kind of preventing yourself from successful adoption there to some degree.
Right. Right.
And before we go to questions, and I did want to, say to those listening, I know we've got a couple. Feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A that you may have. But I just wanted to ask you, kind of reflecting on, all of your experience and the journey you've had with this particular event, like, is there any advice you would give to other organizations, especially around looking to enhance accessibility and engagement at their events utilizing technology?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, beginning with the end in mind, reflecting first on your barriers that anyone could experience with your event, planning for how you're going to remove those barriers in advance, and then using that accessibility conformance report or ACR to gauge, how useful a mobile technology is and supporting you in removing those barriers. Um, but also, as you're considering whether or not you want to go down this road of using a mobile app, I just think it's important to keep in mind that I hear a lot, oh, we need to be more 21st century. we're already almost a quarter of the way into this 21st century. So, like, it's time, in my opinion, using mobile technologies as part it just is. It's part of our common daily lived experience that we're all sharing. And so, for most of the general populace, it's an expectation that there's an app for that, right? We hear that all the time. And so, using technology, in my opinion, is a tool that's meant to support us in the course of our work. And so I guess I would just say to any organization, how can the use of mobile apps enhance both your organization's mission and its reach while not excluding anyone along the way? You know your content best. You can brainstorm and anticipate what those barriers are for persons who have different physical, mental differences. That is the most important part of the planning process, but it does take time to plan. And certainly mobile apps are one way to equalize the playing field for everybody so that they can better experience what your organization has to offer.
Perfect. Thank you. And the first question, or the question we have here, is actually linked to planning. So that's great as a good segue. And what percentage of your planning committee was fluent in ASL?
Yeah, great question. So we have roughly, like I said, 25 members. We have currently on our committee two individuals who are culturally deaf themselves. So they are fluent in American Sign Language. And then I would say, thinking about our committee, 70 to 80% are fluent in some form of manual communication. So, and I'm saying it intentionally like that to respect the fact that American Sign Language is in and of itself its own language. However, there are other forms of manual communication, such as signing exact English. So some of our committee members are well versed in signing exact English, which is not its own language, but it is a form of manual communication. So I would say, around 70 to 80% of the other members are.
Perfect. Well, I think we've tackled the other questions throughout as I've weaved them in. So unless there's any other questions today, I'll give everyone a quick moment if there are any. Please do use the Q&A feature. But if not, firstly, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today, Marina. Thank you for sharing. I do think, yeah, for us, we feel it's really important to have these conversations and to, as your technology provider at the moment, we feel it's important as well to understand how we can improve in, helping your event evolve and meet the needs of your attendees and the people that you're working with. So always, keen to get feedback, and I really appreciate you joining us and sharing a bit of your story and about your event today.
All right. Well, thank you, Nathan. It's been a pleasure to be here.
And I'd also like to thank Lisa for joining us today as well. And yeah, being here to sign for everyone. And to everyone else, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.